or inalienable rights to man.
America's premier historian, David Barton.
John Dickinson, who's also a signer of the Constitution, he said, an inalienable right is a right which God gave to you and which no inferior power has a right to take away.
Wall Builders Live captures the ideas of the Founding Fathers and then applies those ideas to the issues of today. Sunday morning at 11:30 Central on American Family Radio.
The operation is $200,000, $250,000. The recovery period is long, and they have to take large amounts of drugs after that.
Right now, the Mexican government makes money off illegal immigration. The president has very few options because Congress refuses to act. Neither Congress or the Mexican government had lifted a finger to do anything about it.
I was sitting in the White House when President Trump said, I want his security clearance taken, and I saw the order given. I hope President Trump will say, who is countermanding my orders? I said get rid of his clearance.
Do you know most people think that impeachment means you're out of office? Bye-bye, Birdie.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged.
An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity,
where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome to a brand new broadcast edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name, congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent.
As always.
And we're glad to have you as my congenial, convivial, amiable, and effervescent listening audience.
As always.
Along for the ride.
Yay!
Just a quick reminder that tomorrow is the deadline for a signed copy of the Boy to Man book. Go to afastore.net, sign 2 boxes of books this morning to make sure we got enough to handle the orders that come in. So if you make your order, place your order at afastore.net by tomorrow, we will make sure you get a signed copy of the book by June 7th. In fact, we've got one little sound bite. It's just a spot that we've developed to make people aware of the book. Rob, if we can grab that, it's clip R3.
All right, here we go.
Brian Fisher here with today's Life and Liberty Minute. Father's Day is just around the corner, and I recently chatted with Todd Starnes about my new Boy to Man book. Here's an excerpt.
Brian, one of the things I really respect about you is you take a lot of arrows. And, you know, we were talking about this on the show yesterday with what's happening with Tucker Carlson. You've got these leftist groups, hate groups, coming after you, but you stand tall and you stand firm in the faith. And I really appreciate that and respect that about you. You have an incredible new book out, and it's one of those books that people need to read because of what's happening in our culture. The name of the book, ladies and gentlemen, The Boy to Man, Preparing Your Son for Manhood.
You can order a copy for a father and son you love for Father's Day at afastore.net. Order by June 7, and I'll send you a signed copy.
Catch Brian Fisher on Focal Point, weekday afternoons at 1:05 Central on American Family Radio.
And again, the Boy to Man book is a book designed for fathers to read with their 12-year-old sons. So that's the idea of the book. You know, dad's got a 12-year-old son, 11-year-old son, 10-year-old son heading toward 12. Might be a good idea to think about giving them this book as a gift for Father's Day. I want to turn our attention to the Word of God. We have been going through the book, the primary book in the Bible that celebrates sex. Talking about the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs, as it's identified in the Hebrew Bible. You know, Song of Songs like King of Kings, best king ever, Song of Songs. This is the best poem. This is the best portrait of marriage love, sexual intimacy between husband and wife that you can find in all of literature. I just want to read some highlights, and then we want to go to prayer. We're going to pray for every marriage today in your world. So I want, as we go to prayer, you be thinking about the marriages in your world, in your family, in your community, in your church, and we're going to all together pray that God will bless every marriage in our spheres of influence. So the way things develop in chapters 5 and 6 is they have a little marital spat. He wants to come by late at night and take her out for a walk or a cup of coffee or whatever. And she just got out of the shower. Her hair was wet. She didn't want to go to the trouble of getting dressed and going out. So she decided, no, I'm not going to do it. So he leaves. That probably got his feelings hurt. And he heads off into the night. And she all of a sudden has some regret and says, I think I just made a mistake. I need to try to go and catch up to him. And so she looks through the night to find him, asks for the watchman to alert him if they find him. Here are some of the words and phrases in the Song of Solomon chapter 5. I slept, but my heart was awake. A sound. My beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. And she said this, I had put off my garment. How could I put it on? I had bathed my feet. How could I soil them? So she said, I don't want to go. And she arose. Then she changed her mind, arose to open to my beloved. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had turned and gone. I sought him, but I found him not. I called him, but he gave no answer. I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, these were her friends. This is the chorus that's observing this. If you find my beloved, you tell him that I am sick with love. So she was eager. Once she realized the breach that she had caused, she was eager to reconcile. She was eager to do whatever was necessary to make things right so that their relationship could be restored. And then she thinks about all the things she loves about him. He's radiant and ruddy, distinguished among 10,000. Arms are rods of gold. His body is polished ivory. His legs are alabaster columns set on bases of gold. His mouth is most sweet. He is altogether desirable. This is my beloved, and this is my friend. So she shows she's obviously infatuated with her husband. She loves him. She admires him. She thinks he's strong, that she's handsome, and she wants to find him and reconcile this rupture in their relationship. Well, let's go to prayer. Pray these things back to God. This is the National Week of Prayer for the American family. Let's do this together. Heavenly Father, I pray this day in the name of Jesus for every marriage in my family, my church, and in this land. I pray especially for each wife that you will make her responsive to the initiative she receives from her husband. May she be eager to pursue reconciliation when a breach has occurred between them. I pray that her heart will always belong to him and long for his love. I pray that she will always remember him as he was when she fell in love with him. May she always remember the attraction of his face and the strength of his youth. I pray that he will always be to her radiant and strong, outstanding among 10,000 men. May his appearance always be to her as beautiful as the cedar forests of Lebanon, strong and regal. I pray that his mouth will be sweetness itself to her, and that he will be altogether lovely to her as her lover and friend. May she belong wholly to him, and may he belong wholly to her. Amen. Okay, well, let's jump into some content today. Let's start with clip number 1, if we can, Rob. Donald Trump overseas, dealing with Normandy and all that kind of thing. Today is the day, the 75th anniversary of the landing at Normandy. That occurred 75 years ago today. He had some 90-year-old paratroopers duplicating. I mean, they went in tandem. You don't want a 92-year-old guy parachuting by his lone, especially into France. Who knows where he's going to land? So they jumped in tandem, but they reproduced the jump that they made out of airplanes back in 1944. Pretty amazing stuff. And, again, I think that's the most important day in the 20th century. Winston Churchill, because of the way he infused his people with strength. I mean, they were outnumbered. They were outgunned. America was not in the war yet as an ally, and it was Winston Churchill that kept the spirit of the English people alive through the Battle of Britain, when night after night after night the Luftwaffe bombed the city of London with blitz after blitz after blitz. He kept them together, nurtured their souls as a shepherd does, and then when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, the Americans got into the battle with them. He knew they were going to win, and that led to June 6, 1944, and the eventual victory over the Nazi forces. Now, one of the issues that we've complained about is recently is some of the signals, confusing signals that Donald Trump has sent about the homosexual agenda. Now, I don't want anybody to misunderstand me here. I have tremendous affection and regard for President Trump. President Trump has done things that nobody else in America could possibly have done. It took someone with his unique personality, his unique blend of traits to do what he did. You know, his particular bulldogishness, his particular bullishness, it took somebody like that. That's the only kind of president could have gotten done the things that he has been able to get done. But he's been wrong on the issue of homosexuality. He said, look, I'm going to lead a worldwide global crusade to decriminalize homosexual behavior. And so you kind of wonder, well, where's he at? Is he weakening on the rest of the homosexual agenda? Well, here's an encouraging sign. This is Donald Trump talking to Piers Morgan yesterday. Piers Morgan has got a morning program there on British TV on the BBC. And Donald Trump was a guest on his program yesterday, and the subject came up. And here's what Donald Trump says. This is our winnable war moment for today.
It just seems to me an unnecessary thing for a guy who wants to be supportive of LGBT rights and the community around the world, that you've taken this action.
Well, it is what it is. Look, massive amounts, and also people were going in and then asking for the operation, and the operation is $200,000, $250,000, and getting the operation, the recovery period is long, and they have to take large amounts of drugs after that, for whatever reason, but large amounts, and that's not the way it is. I mean, you can't do that. So I said, yeah, when it came time to making a decision on that, and because of the drugs, and also because of the cost of the operation, people were going in.
Transgender people in the U.S. military have won serious gallantry awards.
Yeah.
What do you feel about?
Well, I'm proud of them. I'm proud of them. I think it's great, but you have to have a standard, and you have to stick by that standard. And we have a great military, and I want to keep it that way. And maybe they'd be phenomenal. I think they probably would be. But again, you have very strict rules and regulations on drugs and prescription drugs and all of these different things, and they blow it out of the water.
So Donald Trump in fact, doubling down on no transgenders in the military. You notice he did not budge an inch. And Piers Morgan was pressing him pretty hard to retreat a little bit on this issue of transgenders. And Donald Trump and his reasons for this are absolutely right on point. Regardless of what else you might think, his reasons for having this no transgender policy are absolutely correct. You know, there are people that are joining the United States military not because they want to be soldiers, not because they want to fight to protect liberty. It's because they want to get the surgery. They want to get the transition surgery. They go into the military, and you and I will pay for their surgery. That could be a couple of $100,000 worth of surgery, worth of hormones, worth of treatments, and they're non-deployable. They can't go to the field for 9 months after that. They're out of commission virtually for an entire year. So they just go into the military long enough to get eligible for the surgery, and that's what they're in there for. And Donald Trump says it's a drain on the resources of the American people. It affects deployability. It weakens our military because these soldiers are out of commission while they are going through the process of this transition. There are mental health issues. I mean, the number of issues that are connected to transgenderism, transvestitism, transsexualism, whatever you want to call it, off the charts. You know, the suicide rate among those who go through the transition is 41%. So you're going to have soldiers killing themselves in the United States. They don't need that kind of distraction. They don't need that kind of that kind of a burden to carry when they're trying to protect our security and our liberty and our freedom. You know, it protects military readiness because you've got troops you can't count on. That you can't use them, you can't send them, you can't deploy them. And it also affects morale. It's going to affect morale in these units where these soldiers serve. So Donald Trump, that's our winnable war moment for today. Donald Trump doubling down. No transgenders in President Trump's military. Good for him and for all the right reasons. Brian Fisher, Focal Point, American Family Radio. Be right back.
Pure and undefiled religion in the sight of our God and Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their distress. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Minute. Burley Man Coffee is a subscription coffee service from South Florida that is using their profits to make a difference in the lives of others in more ways than one. The Christian-owned company first gifted Celeste Bokstrom, a single mother and full-time caretaker of her 16-year-old son Logan, who is nonverbal and autistic, with a 4-door Kia sedan. Now, the company has announced an initiative to give cars to 100 single mothers in need to help make their lives a little bit easier.
Listen each weekday from 5 to 6 p.m. Central for the Hamilton Corner, or visit the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, Public Policy Analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Dr. Richard Land, President of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. Today, June 6th, we commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Allied Army's landings at D-Day in Normandy, which began the liberation of Europe from the terrible scourge of Nazi occupation. It was the largest amphibious operation in military history. In the first 24 hours after the landing began, 175,000 American, British, Canadian, French, and other Allied troops came ashore in more than 4,000 landing craft, hundreds of airplane gliders, and parachute drops. The Allies suffered an estimated 10,000 casualties, with 2,500 dead. Today, 27 war cemeteries contain the graves of the more than 110,000 dead from both sides during the Battle for Normandy. On the night of June 6, 1944, President Roosevelt went on the radio and asked the nation to, quote, join with me in prayer, end quote. Here's part of the prayer the President offered up on behalf of the American people. Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity. Lead them straight and true, give strength to their arms, stoutness to their hearts, steadfastness to their faith. They will need thy blessings, for the enemy is strong. Success may not come with rushing speed, but we shall return again and again, and we know that by thy grace and by the righteousness of our cause, our sons will triumph. Then Roosevelt continued and said, O Lord, give us faith in thee, faith in our sons, faith in each other, faith in our united crusade. With thy blessing we shall prevail over the unholy forces of our enemy. Lead us to the saving of our country and a peace that will let all men live in freedom, reaping the just rewards of their honest toil. Thy will be done, Almighty God. Amen. Does anyone doubt that God blessed us on D-Day? We could have lost that battle, but we didn't. And it is because the faith expressed by the President was the faith of the nation. God blesses an America that worships him. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in the conversation. I got a brief story here from National Review. Here's another winnable war moment. Remember, I went through that David French column yesterday where he was just making the point it's way too soon to despair in the culture war. It's, one of the darkest moments we had as a culture was right after Ronald Reagan was elected. You had court cases before the Supreme Court that threatened to extinguish religious liberty, that threatened, if you had the wrong court ruling, to make religious liberty on college campuses illegal. And the Supreme Court ruled on behalf of religious liberty. After that, we started having organizations pop up to protect freedom of speech, to protect religious liberty, and now we've seen a reversal, for instance, on the number of campuses that have these free speech zones, which are basically no speech zones, and we're seeing progress on the sanctity of life front. More and more states are passing laws that restrict abortion and protect human life. Here's the brief story from the National Review Online. earlier this week, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court delivered a message: the lawful exercise of your Second Amendment rights does not make you a second-class citizen. Here's the context, he says. For the last 2 years, federal courts, including the Supreme Court, have endorsed a legal regime where police can use even the lawful exercise of gun rights as a pretext for the violation of other constitutional rights, principally the Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure. So in other words, what you've had courts defending police, law enforcement, when somebody uses a gun lawfully because they've used a gun in their own defense or defense of their family. For some reason, the police think that gives them the right to violate that man's Fourth Amendment rights. The guy that's just exercising his Second Amendment rights, he does that, and all of a sudden his Fourth Amendment rights are tossed off the bus. In 2017, the 11th Circuit held that a police officer enjoyed immunity from suit when he pounded on the door of the wrong apartment late at night, failed to announce himself, and then shot dead a young man when he lawfully answered the door armed. The existence of the gun granted the officer the right to shoot with absolute legal impunity. So that happened. The guy hears somebody pounding on his door in the middle of the night. He doesn't know who it is. He has a legally owned gun for his own protection. He answers the door with the gun in his hand because he doesn't know who's out there, gets shot through the door, and the judge says what the policeman did was okay. Now, here's another one. 2 months later, Supreme Court ruled in favor of police officers who entered the modest dwelling, a one-room shack of a man by the name of Angel Mendez, and opened fire when he pointed a BB gun at them. Mendez lost his leg. His girlfriend was injured. The Supreme Court used this case as an occasion to reverse a Ninth Circuit use of force rule that would impose liability when police provoke a violent confrontation through an independent Fourth Amendment violation. In other words, if the police are going to violate somebody's Fourth Amendment rights, they may provoke some kind of a response from the homeowner whose rights are being invaded. So here's what the judge, the Federal Circuit Court judge, actually said, Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. The majority decision today necessarily leads to the conclusion that individuals who elect to carry firearms forego other constitutional rights, like the Fourth Amendment right to have law enforcement officers knock and announce before forcibly entering homes. Likewise, it is difficult to escape the conclusion that individuals who choose to carry firearms necessarily face greater restriction on their concurrent exercise of other constitutional rights, like those protected by the First Amendment. National Review says in plain English, this means that gun owners must choose, this is the status of the law right now, carry their weapon and lose the full protections of the Bill of Rights, or never pick it up and enjoy your other rights if you live long enough to enjoy them. So the Pennsylvania Supreme Court jumped in and said this: unless a police officer has prior knowledge that a specific individual is not permitted to carry a concealed firearm, and absent articulable facts supporting reasonable suspicion that a firearm is being used or intended to be used in a criminal manner, there simply is no justification for the conclusion that the mere possession of a firearm, where it lawfully may be carried, is alone suggestive of criminal activity. So that's a win for the Second Amendment in the Supreme Court in the state of Pennsylvania. May their tribe increase. You know who's worried about the religion of peace right now? George and Amal Clooney. Amal Clooney, that's George Clooney's wife. She's a civil rights attorney, and she's gone to court. She's suing ISIS in court for genocide, for what they did to the Yazidi people in northern Iraq. Now, there's been a bounty placed on the lives of her children, her and George Clooney. They can't go out for walks in the park. They're kind of trapped in their house. And so Clooney is concerned that his twins are going to be targeted because his wife is fighting on behalf of the Yazidi people. And not even extended family. They don't even tell extended family where they are because the risk that they have from ISIS. So that is your Religion of Peace update. You know, it's interesting. Normally, these Hollywood types, they're just bleeding hearts when it comes to Islam until they run into the truth of Islam themselves, and that's what George and Amal Clooney are doing, and may God protect their innocent children. All right, we got some immigration stuff going on today, and I want to get into some sound bites to give you an update on what's going on in the immigration world. I want to talk about this tariff thing just for a minute. Let's grab clip number 2. I talked about this yesterday, and I've said, look, I'm not a fan of tariffs, because the reality is when people refer to this as basically a tax on the American consumer, they're right. Who pays for the tariff? Well, the foreign producer has to pay the tariff up front, but he recoups it by raising the price of his product by the amount of the tariff. So you slap a 5% tariff on a product made in Mexico. The Mexican importer just raises the price of his product 5%. Then when Americans buy it, he gets reimbursed, and the American consumer is paying the tariff. So I don't like it for that reason. But tariffs are not, by themselves, are not bad. Yeah, where you get the impression, listen to people right now, that just tariffs are in and of themselves evil. Ladies and gentlemen, our entire government was funded by tariffs exclusively from our founding until the passage of the 16th Amendment. The only source of revenue that the federal government had was tariffs from foreign producers who wanted to sell their product in the United States. And our fathers, our political fathers, said, okay, fine. We have a great market. We've got people that are eager to consume. We're a prosperous nation. And we're happy to have you sell your product in our land, but there's an entry fee. You want to come into America and sell your product, it's going to cost you an entry fee. That's what the tariff was. You know, it was an entry fee so you could come into America and sell your stuff. And that's how we funded the federal government. You know what percentage of our federal budget the federal government consumed, or of our gross domestic product, the federal government consumed when the tariffs were our only source? About 3%. And realize there was a cap on how fast the government could grow. They couldn't grow any faster than tariff collections because they had no other source of revenue. So one of the things that did is it put a downward pressure on tariffs, because the federal government knew if we raise tariffs too high, nobody will want to come and sell products in America, and we won't have any money. So they had the incentive to keep tariffs at a place where they were reasonable. There would still be revenue to the United States government, and Americans would still be able to access inexpensive products. Well, those days are long gone. 16th Amendment blew that completely out of the tub. And so now Donald Trump is using tariffs as a tool to deal with the Mexican government, and it's working. One of the stories I cleared just before I came on air is that the Mexican government has intercepted a caravan in southern Mexico from Guatemala, and they're stopping them. And the reason they're stopping them is they don't want to let them go forward, go all the way to America, because Donald Trump is threatening to slap tariffs on them. They're going to do it starting on Monday, I think, if they don't get their minds right. So the fact that Donald Trump is using tariffs as a disciplinary measure is working. It's getting the attention of the Mexican people. They've already sent a delegation up here to the United States to negotiate with Donald Trump, with the Trump administration, over tariffs. So it's working. And, you know, the other question when it comes to using tariffs as a tool in the immigration debacle, what other option does Donald Trump have? What other option does he have? The courts and Congress have taken away every tool that the Constitution and the law gives them. The president is the sole executive officer. All executive power rests in him. So when Congress makes a law and entrusts that to the executive branch to enforce, to implement, that's the president. Anybody working for the president to do it is simply expressing acting on his executive power. So he's got all of the authority that he needs to shut down that border, but the courts won't let him do it. Well, and I've said this before, I think it's time for Donald Trump to stop listening to the courts myself. I think, he can read the Constitution just like everybody else does. And remember, Thomas Jefferson, a lot of people don't know this, but Thomas Jefferson said, look, every branch of government has the authority and the right to decide for themselves the implications of the Constitution in their own sphere of responsibility and jurisdiction. Nobody has the right to tell them what the Constitution means for them. The remedy for that, well, if you don't like the way that branch of government is interpreting and using the Constitution, to get rid of them and put new people in their place. Right now, we've got no recourse. Supreme Court makes a bad decision, we're stuck with it. Nothing we can do about it. If it's the elected officials that make a bad decision, you can replace them with those that are more responsive to the Constitution and to the will of the people. So here is Peter Navarro. He's a consultant and advisor to the president on economic issues. He's talking with Jim Scudo of CNN, who has kind of a conventional view of tariffs. Here is clip number 2 talking about tariffs.
The real argument should be about the costs that illegal immigration imposes upon the United States of America and the fact that neither Congress or the Mexican government had lifted a finger to do anything about it, and that the president has very few options because Congress refused this act. This, in my judgment, this is a brilliant strategic move to get the Mexicans to internalize some of the costs. Right now, the Mexican government makes money off illegal immigration. After the tariffs are put in place, the Mexican government will bear costs of that. We believe that these tariffs may not have to go into effect precisely because we have the Mexicans' attention. Vice President Pence will be meeting with them today.
Okay, so Peter Navarro says, look, the threat of these tariffs is all it took to get the Mexican government to the negotiating table. They sent an embassy, a group up here to meet with Vice President Pence on the issue of tariffs. See if something can be done. And that's what brought them to the table, is the threat that if they don't do something, tariffs are going to land. Mexico has created their own National Guard, never had one before, but that's the group that went down there and apprehended those migrants from Guatemala, stopped them in their tracks. Why? Because of tariffs. Peter Navarro talking about the fact that Mexico benefits from illegal immigration. Remember the remittances. 20% of their entire budget comes from remittances from illegal aliens that are in the United States working here illegally and then sending their money back to relatives in Mexico. That's a primary source of revenue for their entire economy. So they're benefiting from it, and they're paying no price for it. And as I said before, the key thing for President Trump is to figure out a way to make illegal immigration Mexico's problem. That's what you have to do. You have to make illegal immigration Mexico's problem. Right now, it's our problem. We're being overrun. The estimates are today that 1 million illegal aliens are going to flood into this country this year. 1 million illegal aliens coming into the United States of America. We've got holding facilities that are designed for 125 people. They have 900 people in them. You have people in detention centers, standing room only for weeks because there's no place to put them. Now, here is the second exchange between Peter Navarro and Jim Scudo, clip number 3.
Is there something that Mexico could do between now and Monday that will prevent the president from imposing 5% tariffs?
Absolutely. They could commit to taking all the asylum seekers and then applying Mexican laws, which are much stronger than ours. Look, here's the thing. If the people who are moving up with scripts to claim asylum from their narco-trafficker, human trafficker handlers simply understood that that script ain't going to work anymore getting into America, they're going to be in Mexico instead, that 100,000 will go to a trickle in the 21 days
so there
it
is
takes
a concession
for that message to get back.
Mexico can make today to prevent tariffs on Monday?
Absolutely. That's the number one on my list. The other two things are we have a 2,000-mile plus border with Mexico, very hard to police. The southern border, however, that Mexico has with Guatemala is only 150 miles, and better yet, It has both natural and artificial choke points where it is really easy to police.
And this goes back, Jeff, to what you were saying yesterday about it's much easier to shut down traffic across Mexico's southern border than across our southern border.
Yeah, I don't know if I said that on the air. It might have been on the break. But, yeah, that was exactly the point I was trying to make.
So that's what he's saying. We'll just drive this thing back to Mexico, make illegal immigration their problem. It's easier for them to deal with it because they have a much smaller border, much shorter border to control. Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. We'll close the loop on the immigration thing when we come back. Stay with us.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
50 million Americans suffer from chronic pain, but the drive to end opioid abuse, which mostly involves illegal opioids, has left too many patients in desperate pain. Pharmacists refuse to fill prescriptions for 25% of cancer patients, and insurers often refuse to pay for them. As a result, suicides are increasing. Now pain patients are pushing back. Don't Punish Pain rallies took place on May 22nd, and a protest at the CDC is scheduled for June 21st. Pain experts say the 2016 federal opioid guideline has been misapplied, so HHS issued a 2019 clarification letter. But many doctors have already quit prescribing out of fear of prosecution or loss of license.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
It was a bad move. Target invited men who say they feel like women into restrooms and changing areas designated for women. They probably guessed other retailers would follow their lead, but they were wrong. Others saw that bandwagon was headed in the wrong direction. We're not ready to sacrifice the safety of women and children for the sake of progressive bathroom policies. Invite Target to make a better move. Sign the Boycott Target Pledge at afa.net.
Today's culture is opting for entertainment rather than biblical enlightenment. For those who resist that trend, Friends of Israel shows listeners why loving the Jewish people and supporting Israel is important to the Christian faith. Friends of Israel shares biblical truth about Israel and the Messiah and promotes solidarity with the Jewish people.
This is Chris Katolka of the Friends of Israel Today radio program, heard each weekend on this station, and here's what's happening in Israel.
Friends of Israel, Saturday afternoon at 2, here on American Family Radio.
Who says you can't have your cake and eat it too? If you're like a lot of people, you would like to support the culture-changing efforts of the American Family Association. But there's the very pressing reality that your income must meet your current needs as well as act as seed for future income, either for the short term or for life. A charitable gift annuity might be your answer. A charitable gift annuity offers a unique method for both planning ahead for permanent income and supporting the work of the American Family Association. An AFA Foundation representative will walk you through the details of creating a charitable gift annuity, allowing you to decide if a charitable gift annuity is right for your individual financial situation. Connect with us today by calling 800-326-4543, extension 345, or visit us online at afafoundation.net.
American Family Radio.
You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher.
Howdy, and welcome back to Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Time for the Reed Report. Our intrepid investigative reporter, Jeff Reed, even probing the reaches of outer space.
Oh, yeah.
To bring you information that you need to have and that you need to know. Jeff, give us the Reed Report for today.
Yeah, if you're one of those people that likes to look at the stars and stuff, you may want to mark June 10th, this Monday, on your calendar. It will be the time that Jupiter is closest to the Earth, and it's in line with the Earth, so you'll be able to see it with the naked eye. Also, if you have a small telescope or even just binoculars, you should be able to see some of the patterns on there and maybe even pick up a couple of their largest moons.
Pick up some of the moons of Jupiter with a pair of binoculars.
They have 79 moons, but only a few of them are big enough to be recognize. Actually, 26 of the moons are still awaiting names, so maybe we could have a focal point moon or something
why not?
like that.
Yeah, name one after us. That's
right.
Why not? Yeah.
So that's Monday. It'll be all night.
Monday all night, binoculars. Now, a little closer to home, but also referring to the environment, the atmosphere, things up there. Yeah. Tell us what Uber is up to. This just cracks me up.
Uber is starting in July. On July 9th, they're starting Uber copters.
Uber copters.
They're going to have little helicopters, enough to fit 5 people in there. But for now, right now, it's only to take you from southern Manhattan to Kennedy Airport. It's only about an 8-minute ride, but and it's good. They're going to rate their fares, kind of like they do with the cars. It'll go up more if there's more in demand, but it's going to be somewhere around $200, $225. It also includes an Uber to pick you up, get you to the helicopter, and also once they land at Kennedy to get you to the front gate. So
all right,
so includes that.
Uber copters, it's a happening thing. I read today that Amazon expects to start delivering packages before too long using drones.
Yeah.
Up to 5-pound packages, drop them right on your front doorstep.
At the cost of a taxi in New York, that's probably a really good deal, for $200 to cover that.
Well,
plus your time.
Yeah, and you think New York, the hotsy-totsy rich people in New York, the way they handle the traffic, they just get in the back seat of their limo and they can just tune out the world. Now they don't even have to mess with that.
I wonder if they're going to have a baggage fee on that also. You probably can't bring too much. If there are going to be 5 people on a small helicopter, you probably can't bring too much luggage.
That's right. No. That's a good point. Well, maybe they'll have the Uber thing take it out to the airport for you. Or have Amazon.
Oh, yeah, the
Just
drone.
hire Amazon
Drone
to come in and pick up your suitcases and drone them out there to the airport. All right, a couple of quick items on the immigration deal, just to close the loop on this. I learned today, this will grind your gears. It grinds my gears. Remember everything we have to put up with TSA agents probing us and feeling us up, and the wait and the line and the congestion and all that kind of stuff. Well, you know what TSA is doing with illegal immigrants? They allow them to get on a plane with no identification.
You're kidding.
With no proper documentation, none. All they got to do is show them there's some piece of paper that they have to show them. What is the piece of paper? The only thing they got to show them, what is that? It's in the article or somewhere. Present the document they are given when they apply for asylum. Not when they get asylum. They just apply for asylum and they get a piece of paper. Probably all it does is tell them which court they're supposed to show up and when. And that's all the documentation they need. There's 15 documents you can use for legal identification to get on a plane in America. They don't have a single one of them, and they don't have to show a single one of them. And TSA will let you fly wherever your little old cotton-picking heart wants you to go. By the way, just a little factoid in this piece. I was talking about the fact that the judges are running our immigration system despite the fact they've got zero authority to do that constitutionally or legally. The reason that they cannot hold on to families is because of a court ruling in 2015 that says you can't hold families for more than 20 days. That's why you have all of these unaccompanied children, these children flooding into America. They have these children that are being rented out. You get two illegals that want to come into the country. They rent them a child. They come across the border claiming, this is my son, this is my daughter, and they get in. And then they can't be held more than 20 days. If they're there as a family, they have to be let go. So they just disappear into the interior, never to be seen again. So that's not something that Donald Trump is responsible for. That's not something you can blame Donald Trump for. Not his idea. That's courts monkeying with our immigration system. So anyway, that's just. So it's like it's like a pre-check line for illegals. When Deb and I have flown this year, maybe every other time we get a pre-check little check thing. Yeah. Where you don't have to take your shoes off and you just kind of go right through and all that.
What are those special tickets you can get at Disneyland as some kind of pass?
Oh,
you don't have to stand in line.
Yeah, whatever that's called. But anyway, you know, at Disneyland, you don't have to stand. Well, they got it. So illegal aliens have privileges, TSA checkpoints, that you and I do not have. So there's another way they're getting rewarded for breaking American law. Got a problem now with illegal aliens from the continent of Africa. This is all happening just this month of June. 500 migrants from the continent of Africa have been apprehended just since May 30th. The first group included 117 African migrants from the Republic of Congo, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Angola. All right, so that's Africa now getting in on the illegal alien deal. And again, here's that prediction that the number of illegals that will become allowed into the country in 2019 is going to be over 1 million. That's the most since 2005. Here's an example of overcrowding. El Paso has a migrant processing facility. It's designed to hold 125 detainees. At one point, it had 900 of them in dangerous conditions. And Border Patrol security personnel, they're concerned because of the tensions, everybody in close proximity. And, you know, some of these people are pretty bad actors. Things could turn violent in a pretty big hurry. Let's see. Some of the detainees have been held in standing room only conditions for days or weeks. And what does the left want to do? Who do they want to blame that on? They want to blame that on Donald Trump for being inhumane. This is terrible what President Trump is doing to these poor illegals. Well, it's not Donald Trump's fault, not his idea. You know, they detained 1,000 immigrants in one group this week, I think on Wednesday night. That's the most they've ever seized at one time. So the immigration problem obviously getting much worse before it gets better. Here's that story about Mexico actually blocking this caravan of Central American immigrants. They blocked them. And again, the reason, this is AFP, which is like the overseas French version of Associated Press. This is what the article says. They are scrambling to dodge President Donald Trump's threat to impose tariffs over undocumented immigration. So that got their mind right. They rounded up 420 illegal aliens, and they're taking them to a detention center by bus. Now, what Mexico had been doing, you remember, is they've been loading illegals up on buses and driving them to the U.S. border. Now they're loading them up on buses and driving them back to the border with the country from which they came. You know, 80% of everything that Mexico exports, it exports to the U.S. So these tariffs are going to hit them right where it hurts. That's why it's got their attention. So I say good for Trump. I'm not a big fan of tariffs, but I think it's the only choice that he's had. You know, I think I mentioned this last week. Story just migrated to the top here. But, you know, the governor of New Mexico, her name is Michelle Lujan Grisham. They have more illegal aliens than they can take care of. So what she did is she loaded up 55 of them in a caravan and sent them to Colorado and dumped them in Colorado. Didn't tell the governor or anything that they were on the way. You know, because people just getting overrun. They don't have the resources to take care of it, so they are going to spread the wealth and dump them in Colorado. All right, let's get some sound bites here in the last few minutes that we have dealing with the Mueller report, the whole issue of the Trump-Russia scandal, and what's behind that impeachment for President Trump, all that stuff. Now, here's Phil Mudd, clip number 4. This guy's a former CIA agent. And, Rob, I think I want us to drop down and pick up. I have another Phil Mudd clip here, clip 13. So let's play these back to back. Here's Phil Mudd talking with to Don Lemon. He's a former CIA analyst, and he's predicting here what's going to happen because Bill Barr's got some people that are going to interview Christopher Steele. They're going to meet with him. They're going to interview him. Christopher Steele, the guy that wrote the Steele dossier that this whole thing is based on, they're going to meet with him. And Phil Mudd says that is a big-time problem. It's a big-time problem for John Brennan, for James Comey. It's a big-time problem for Rod Rosenstein. Everybody that had any part of those FISA warrants. Here's what he says is going to happen, clip 4.
I'm going to bet a paycheck that when Steele gets in front of investigators and they say, how can you confirm to us that the information you acquired in that dossier is true, that he's not going to be able to answer whether he had a second or third source.
But wasn't he just supposed to gather the information and then the intelligence community is supposed to figure out whether it's true or not?
No, he's supposed to gather the information and then the Republicans or Democrats use it in a political ad. This is not an intelligence game. This is a political game.
So Phil Mudge is blowing the whistle on this. And this had nothing to do with an intelligence investigation. It had nothing to do with a criminal investigation. This was simply a ploy to get Donald Trump out of commission. And they just grabbed this thing because it was they had nothing else. So along comes the Steele dossier, paid for by Hillary Clinton, paid for by the DNC, has some salacious stuff, accusations again. They got nothing else. They've been looking for stuff on Trump ever since he started rumoring about a run. They had nothing. So they grabbed this thing off the shelf right before the election. Remember, they went to the FISA judge on October 16 because they wanted to get this thing done before the election. It's all they had. So that's what they went with. Not verified. And Christopher Steele, according to Phil Mudd, is probably going to tell the FBI, look, it wasn't verified. I didn't have an opportunity to get those second and third witnesses and to verify it. Here's the second Phil Mudd clip number 13.
Let me give you how this game ends. Christopher Steele shows up in front of the Department of Justice, and I'm guessing doesn't have terrific answers for the quality of the information in that Steele dossier. I'm telling you, Wolf, this is not going to go well. I can't believe he has perfect answers about the origins of the Steele dossier. I'm not even sure why he's showing up. If I were him, I'd go to Disney World. I would not go to the Department of Justice because it will not end up well. The question here is not just what Steele found. If it's determined that Steele had a bit of questionable information, that's fine. If it's found that that questionable information played into, for example, the FISA warrant to look at Carter Page's emails, that is a hot mess, and I think that's where we're headed here.
You know, and that's why these people are quaking in their boat shoes. That's why John Brennan is quaking, James Comey is quaking, James Clapper is quaking. Why they're all quaking in their boots, because Christopher Steele knows two things. He knows that the information in his dossier was not verified. He had no corroboration for any of it, and he knows that he told the FBI that. He told them that. He told them, look, I can't vouch for anything that's in the Steele dossier. I couldn't find corroborating witnesses, corroborating evidence or witnesses. It's unverified. Like James Comey said, it's unverified and salacious. Well, you can't go to a FISA judge with something that you know is unverified and salacious, because you have to sign that to the best of your knowledge, this information in this is verified, it's true, it's rock solid, we've looked at it, it can be confirmed, and therefore we need a warrant from you, Judge, to go spy on Donald Trump. And Christopher Steele's going to show up and say, look, there was nothing verified, and I told the FBI that. You know, I told the FBI people, look, I don't have anything that's verified in this this whole deal. Clip 12, this is Matt Rosenberg from the New York Times talking about what Christopher Steele is afraid of.
He is incredibly concerned, maybe obsessed, that this investigation is going to throw him under the bus. And his view, at least according to people close to him, is, look, I was working on this dossier other people were paying for. I saw things that the Democrats were paying for. He was simply helping them out, and what they did with it, if they misused it in a FISA or whatever they did, he had nothing to do with that, which is to a degree true. He's not part of that process. He was simply a source of information, and I think he's acutely concerned that he's going to be thrown under the bus here.
You know, and I think he's exactly right, because James Comey, those guys aren't going to take the fall by themselves. They're looking for somebody to blame, and Christopher Steele is the guy they're going to try to lay this whole thing off on him. That's it for today. Don't forget, as Donald Trump proved on the military, we are fighting winnable wars. See you back here tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Hello, this is Dr. Ronnie Floyd, President of the National Day of Prayer Task Force. The Apostle Paul wrote that we should pray without ceasing. Every day should be a day of prayer. As you pray today, would you